Imagine walking along Gilgo Beach on a cold December morning. The Atlantic wind cuts right through your jacket, sharp and salty. The sand feels hard under your shoes, damp from last night's tide. You hear the steady crash of waves, the distant call of gulls, and nothing else. It feels isolated, almost peaceful, until your eyes catch something out of place. Half buried in the dunes is a burlap sack, worn, frayed, weathered by the sea. At first, it could be trash washed ashore, but it isn't. Inside lies a human body, wrapped, hidden, discarded like it never mattered. That discovery in December 2010 would set off one of the most chilling investigations in Long Island's history. Because once police began to search, they didn't just find one body. They found another, and another, and another, all within a short stretch of sand. How does a quiet beach like this become the graveyard of a serial killer? This case would come to be known as the work of the Long Island serial killer, often called LISK, a predator believed to have been active for at least 15 years, from 1996 to 2011. At least 10 victims, possibly more. Most of them women working in the sex trade, advertising through sites like Craigslist. Women whose disappearances barely made the news at first. For years, these murders would haunt Suffolk County and beyond, their details whispered about but never solved. Every new lead seemed to lead into the fog. Every possible answer brought more questions. Tonight, we're going to walk through that story, piece by piece. Not with wild theories, but with what's been uncovered in police files, press reports, and court records. We'll explore who the victims were, how they were found, the strange twists in the investigation, and the one suspect whose arrest seemed to break the silence, yet still left the biggest question unanswered. Is the real killer still out there? This isn't just a crime story. It's a reminder that behind every headline, every case number, is a life that mattered and a family still waiting for justice. So, picture that shoreline again. The dark sky above, the wind in your ears, the ocean rolling endlessly in and out. Somewhere, under that sand, the secrets of a killer have been sleeping for years. To understand how it all began, we have to start with the people at the center of it, the women whose lives were stolen. Long Island. When most people think of it, they picture quiet suburbs, manicured lawns, and wealthy coastal communities. Expensive homes with ocean views. Small towns where neighbors wave at each other and kids ride bikes down tree-lined streets. But like any place, there's another side. In the shadows of that wealth, in the spaces people don't talk about, there was an underground economy, one that thrived in the anonymity of the internet. Craigslist ads, disposable phones, quick arrangements made between strangers who would never see each other again. It was in that hidden world that 4 women, later called the Gilgo Four, would cross paths with a killer. Melissa Barthelemy was just 24. Petite, with long brown hair and a guarded smile. She'd grown up in Western New York, close to her family, but had dreams of making more of herself. She moved to New York City, hoping for opportunity, but ended up working as an escort to make ends meet. She was still in touch with her mother, still the big sister her sibling looked up to. Melissa disappeared in July 2009. For her family, the silence was instant and devastating. Maureen Brainerd Barnes was 25, a single mother from Connecticut, trying to balance caring for her children and paying the bills. She was outgoing, the kind of person who could make friends anywhere. But times were hard, and the escort work she once swore off pulled her back. Maureen vanished in July 2007 after telling a friend she had a client in New York City. She never came home. Amber Lynn Costello was 27, from North Carolina, living on Long Island with a roommate. Friends described her as funny, full of life, but struggling with addiction. She used escort work to support herself and to try to keep her head above water. In September 2010, she left her home to meet a client. That was the last time anyone saw her alive. Megan Waterman was 22, a young mother from Maine with a bold personality and a love for her little girl. In June 2010, she traveled to Long Island with her boyfriend, telling family she'd be back soon. She posted ads online, arranging meetings. One night, she left her hotel room and never returned. 4 women, for different lives. But they shared a common vulnerability, living on the margins, in a world where missing women often don't make front-page news. And then there was Shannon Gilbert. She wasn't part of the Gilgo Four, but she is the reason they were found. Shannon was 24, from upstate New York, working as an escort through Craigslist. In the early morning hours of May 1st, 2010, she placed a frantic 911 call from the gated community of Oak Beach. For 23 minutes, she told the dispatcher she was in danger. She ran from house to house, banging on doors, begging for help. By the time police arrived, she was gone. It was during the search for Shannon, months later, that police stumbled upon Melissa, Maureen, Amber, and Megan, buried in the sand dunes along Gilgo Beach. The discovery turned the investigation into something much bigger. It wasn't just about one missing woman anymore. This was a pattern, a calculated predator at work. And yet, in the rush to label them as prostitutes in headlines, the humanity of these women was often lost. They were daughters, sisters, mothers, friends. They had hopes and flaws, just like anyone. You ever think about that? How easy it is for certain stories to fade. Because society doesn't want to look too closely. They weren't statistics. They weren't just victims. They were people whose lives mattered. And their families are still waiting for answers. But it was Shannon's disappearance, the chaos of that night, that pulled the curtain back. Without her, the Gilgo Four might still be lying there, hidden under the sand, their names never spoken. And so, to understand what happened next, we have to retrace the steps that led from one woman's terrified call for help to the chilling discoveries that followed. It all starts with that night in May of 2010. Shannon Gilbert's voice, panicked, urgent, cut through the calm of the early morning. For 23 long minutes, she stayed on the phone with a 911 dispatcher, saying someone was after her. She knocked on doors in the gated community of Oak Beach, pleading for help before disappearing into the darkness. When police first searched for her, they treated it like a missing persons case. Maybe she had run off. Maybe she'd turn up. But months passed. And then, in December 2010, an officer and his cadaver dog were combing the marshland and dunes along Gilgo Beach, looking for Shannon. What they found wasn't her. Instead, in the cold sand, partially buried in the brush, lay the remains of another woman, later identified as Melissa Barthelemy. Not far from her, the same day, they found the bodies of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Amber Lynn Costello, and Megan Waterman. 4 women, for shallow graves, all within a quarter mile of each other, all wrapped in burlap. In the biting December wind, with the ocean roaring nearby, police began to realize this wasn't one disappearance. This was a graveyard. But the search didn't stop there. In the early months of 2011, as the investigation widened, more remains were uncovered along the Ocean Parkway corridor. Some were full skeletons. Some were only partial, dismembered. A human skull. A pair of hands. A torso. A toddler's body was even found, near the remains of a woman believed to be her mother. By the end of that year, authorities had identified 10 sets of human remains. Some victims were linked by similar details. Women working in the sex trade, last contacted through Craigslist or similar online ads. Others didn't fit the same pattern, leading investigators to wonder, were there multiple killers using the same dumping ground? What they did know was this: the killer or killers had a method. They chose vulnerable victims. They used online ads to make contact. They arranged meetings in private locations. And then they silenced them. Most of the identified victims had been strangled. It was organized, controlled. The kind of behavior you see in someone who's done this before and knows how to cover their tracks. And yet, there was no sign of Shannon Gilbert among these grim discoveries. That fact gnawed at detectives. If she wasn't one of the Gilgo Four, then where was she? And did her disappearance connect to these murders? Or was it a tragic coincidence? The search for Shannon continued through the marshes, thick with tall reeds and freezing water. In December 2011, 1 year after the first bodies were found, police finally located her remains in a swampy area about half a mile from where she was last seen. The official theory at the time? Shannon had run into the marsh in a state of distress and drowned. Her family never accepted that. They believed she was chased, and that she knew something. Whether she was a victim of the Long Island serial killer or the target of someone else entirely, her disappearance was the spark that exposed a string of murders stretching back over a decade. Still, even with the discoveries piling up, investigators faced huge challenges. The dumping grounds spanned miles of remote, windswept shoreline. The remains were exposed to harsh weather, erasing potential evidence. Years had passed between some of the murders, meaning DNA was degraded. And perhaps most frustrating of all, whoever the killer was, they were disciplined. They used burner phones to contact victims. They never left behind obvious fingerprints or personal items. They blended back into normal life unseen. As winter turned to spring in 2011, the timeline of horror was clear. 2007, Maureen Brainerd Barnes disappears. 2009, Melissa Barthelemy disappears. 2010, Megan Waterman and Amber Lynn Costello disappear. December 2010, the Gilgo Four are found. Early 2011, additional remains discovered, some dating back to the late 1990s. December 2011, Shannon Gilbert's remains found in Oak Beach Marsh. Each date on that list is the endpoint of a life. Each discovery raises the same haunting question. Was Shannon the key to unlocking it all? For Suffolk County Police, the hunt was now fully underway. But as they dug deeper, the investigation would prove to be as tangled as the marsh grass along the shore. Because in cases like this, finding the bodies is just the beginning. After the discoveries along Gilgo Beach, Suffolk County Police faced a nightmare task: finding the person responsible. They started with the most direct piece of evidence they had: the 911 call Shannon Gilbert made on May 1st, 2010. For 23 minutes, she told the dispatcher she feared for her life. The recording captured her voice, panicked, breathless, and the muffled background sounds of men talking. Investigators analyzed every second of that call, trying to pick out clues. Voices they could match, words they could trace, even background noises that might pinpoint her location. But nothing definitive came from it. No clear name, no face, no proof of who was with her that night. The next step was the remains. Forensic teams collected DNA, looking for matches in national databases. Some victims were identified quickly, like the Gilgo Four. Others took years, and a few remain unknown to this day. Jane Does, whose identities are still a mystery. Back in 2010 and 2011, technology wasn't what it is now. Touch DNA analysis was limited. Genetic genealogy, the same technique used in the Golden State Killer case, wasn't widely available. And the killer had been meticulous. No fingerprints, no personal items, no traceable fibers. Police also dug into phone records. Many of the victims had arranged meetings through Craigslist, using burner phones. The killer had done the same, purchasing prepaid phones with cash, activating them in one area, using them in another, and tossing them before they could be tracked. It was calculated. For years, the case stalled. Leads came in, but most went nowhere. Tips pointed to local residents, disgraced officers, even multiple killers. But nothing stuck. Then, in July 2023, everything shifted. Police announced the arrest of a man named Rex Heuermann, a 59-year-old architect from Massapequa Park, just a short drive from Gilgo Beach. Married, a father, with no obvious criminal record. From the outside, he seemed ordinary. But investigators had quietly been watching him for more than a year. They had matched DNA from a pizza crust Heuermann discarded in Manhattan to DNA found on one of the Gilgo Four victims. Cell phone records placed him in the areas where several victims disappeared. And his internet search history was chilling. Queries about torture, serial killers, and the Gilgo case itself. Heuermann was charged with the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello. Later, charges were added for Maureen Brainerd Barnes, bringing the total to 4 confirmed counts. In 2025, prosecutors linked him to 2 additional murders, bringing the charges to 6. Police say he used burner phones to contact his victims, just as investigators had long suspected the killer did. He also fit a key behavioral profile: someone organized, methodical, confident enough to lead a double life. Still, even with the arrest, big questions remain. Heuermann has pleaded not guilty. His defense argues the evidence is circumstantial, that DNA transfer could have happened in other ways, and that the cell phone data isn't precise enough to place him at the scene. And then there's the bigger picture. Of the 10 or more victims found along Ocean Parkway, Heuermann is not charged in all of them. Some cases, like the unidentified Asian male found in 2011 or the dismembered remains of Peaches and her toddler, don't fit the same pattern as the Gilgo Four. The possibility remains that more than one killer used this stretch of coastline to hide their crimes. Even in 2025, the case is not closed. Technology has advanced. Genetic genealogy is now a standard tool, mapping family trees from tiny traces of DNA. Geographic information systems can analyze locations, patterns, and dumping sites with pinpoint accuracy. But so far, those tools have not connected all the dots. Heuermann may be a central piece of the puzzle, but is he the whole picture? That's the unsettling part. For the families of the unidentified victims, there's no closure yet. For the community, there's no certainty the danger is gone. And for investigators, every new test result brings the hope of an answer and the fear of more questions. You have to wonder, can technology really solve a mystery that's been buried for decades? Or are some secrets destined to stay hidden in the sand? Even with the progress, the case has an unfinished feel. The kind that keeps detectives awake at night. Because until every victim has a name and every suspect is confirmed, the story of the Long Island serial killer isn't over. And that's the challenge of a cold case like this. No matter how far you come, you're always chasing something just out of reach. But in 2023, with the arrest of Rex Heuermann, the hunt took its biggest step forward in years. Whether it's the final step remains to be seen. The Long Island serial killer case, it's a story that has stretched over decades. And even now, in 2025, it's not fully written. Yes, Rex Heuermann's arrest in 2023 was a massive breakthrough. For some families, it finally brought a name, a face, and the hope of justice. But for others, the waiting continues. Several victims remain unidentified, their stories untold. Their families, if they're even still out there, may not even know their loved one's fate. That's the part that stays with you. These were people, not just headlines, not just a case file in a police archive. They were daughters, sisters, mothers, friends. They laughed, they dreamed, they struggled, just like anyone else. And for too long, their lives and their disappearances didn't make the front page. Society tends to look away when the victims are sex workers or people living on the margins. The Gilgo Beach case forced many to confront an uncomfortable truth: that some lives are treated as less urgent, less worthy of justice. This investigation, slow, frustrating, and relentless, has changed that conversation. It's a reminder that no one is truly forgotten unless we allow them to be. If you have information about the Long Island serial killer case, no matter how small you think it is, contact the Suffolk County Police Department. Sometimes, it's the smallest detail that can unlock a mystery. And I'd like to hear from you. Do you believe Rex Heuermann is the only person responsible for the Gilgo Beach murders? Or do you think more than one killer has used that lonely stretch of coastline? Share your thoughts in the comments. Because this case is more than a crime story. It's a testament to persistence. To the determination of investigators, journalists, and family members who refuse to let these women disappear from memory. Even after years of silence, leads can surface. DNA can speak. Technology can connect the dots. And justice, it can arrive even when it feels too late. The LISK case is a haunting reminder of the darkness that can hide in plain sight, but also of the light that comes from refusing to give up. So if you want to follow the twists and turns as this case develops, and other stories like it, make sure to subscribe. We'll keep digging. We'll keep asking the hard questions. And we'll keep these victims' names alive. Because time may pass, but justice doesn't have an expiration date.